Today we were talking about API Gateway, but at first I would like to thank Vistaprint for organizing the event, and special thanks for our organizing team. There's Kove, Lucka, and Ivak, who are taking care about the technicalities. Okay. As I said, today we were talking about APIs, API Gateway, how to develop APIs quickly, rapidly, and so on. Our presentation will have two parts. The first are some funny stories and talk why we are doing this and what's it good for. And at the end, I would like to show you some live demo. And I would like to create an API without much coding here in front of you. So, wish me luck. But at first, funny stories. Do you know who is this guy? Does anybody know who is this guy? No? But not so bad? Okay, it's Thomas Alva Edison. You probably know him. It's quite famous inventor, one of the most famous, most successful ones. And during his lifetime, he was able to acquire more than 1,000 patents in the US. 1,000. It's quite a lot. And, well, if you take into account that his career was, I don't know, 50 years, it means that he got a new patent like every 2 or 3 weeks, which is, I would say, quite impressive. Interesting fact is that you probably know him because he invented light bulb, he invented phonograph, and all this electrical engineering stuff, but he was able to acquire patents in completely different fields like chemistry. And he has some patents even for mining and all this stuff. And when I was reading his life story, the surprising fact is that he wasn't any sort of genius, or not a genius in the traditional way. He was more like a manager. And he wasn't a crazy scientist that sits in the basement. He was just, he had an idea, and then he just tried things. And after some time, after some number of maybe failures, he usually succeeded and got a new invention. The thing which characterizes his life, I would say, is his most famous quotation, which is, I have not failed, I've just discovered 10,000 ways that won't work. And this is, he said it regarding to invention of the light bulb. And really the rumor says that he had to try several thousand materials for the light bulb before he discovered that, I think it was carbonized bamboo works as the material for the light bulb. And it shines and glows in the dark and great. Today we use a wolfram, but well, the first light bulbs were using this. So his big achievement was that he somehow understand that the failing is just part of the process, that if you fail some reasonable number of times, you may, in the end, succeed. And he created a factory, and I call it Factory for Failing, in Menlo Park in New Jersey, and he employed quite a lot of employees just to try new things with new materials and so on. And, okay, that was an Edison. And how is it connected with us as a developers? We, as a developers and developers of everything, sometimes just need to try things. And this applies both for designing a new application or choosing proper technologies. If you are designing a new application, it's almost impossible to get it 100% right at the first attempt. How should I do the onboarding? Should I put a wizard there or some guided tour? If there's a dashboard, so what sort of data should I put there? You usually just need to try it. Just try and try. And after several attempts, you will usually get it right. The same applies for choosing technologies. If you are, I don't know, selecting database for your backend, well, there are, I don't know, 20 key value stores on the market. Which one is the best for me? I don't know. Sometimes I just need to try it, because I can read the documentation, but I can spend months doing that, and I will still not be sure which one works best with my data. So we need to fail and try things as well. But sometimes I hear that APIs are somehow different. Is API different from this? And I'm saying it is not. The API should follow the same process as your application flows. So it should mature with your application. If your application is in the first phases and you are running startup and you have a meeting with your investors in 1 week, then you should not take care about whether your API is 100% RESTful. It should just do the thing that you need. It should provide the data you need, and so on. The same applies for performance, for scaling, and all these things around. So, you don't have to care about everything, but you still need to care about something. If you want to put an API into production, it should still meet some quality standards. There's some business logic that, well, it must do something, of course. But you should make sure that you are communicating with your clients in some secure way, so you are using SSL, probably. And in most cases, you need some sort of authentication or authorization with your users. And even with the most simple, non-RESTful, strange API, you just need to have this, because, well, nobody will communicate with the API, it's just HTTP. You should be able to test it. You should be able to monitor it, so you should know if something happens, that, well, it happened, and somebody probably should be alerted that, well, something happened, and maybe wake up and, well, just do something. You, well, should take care at least a little bit about scaling, so if you are successful, your API should not just fail and break because of the load of users. And of course, you need to document it. API without documentation is not useful, I would say, for anybody. Just if you do not know what you should call and what it returns, then it's really hard to integrate with such an API. So this applies even for the most simple APIs. And this is most of the stuff, apart from the business logic, is something which you need, but it doesn't bring much value for you. Because, well, the thing which brings the value is the business logic. It's the thing that API is designed for. Other things are usually some boilerplate code which just puts everything together and makes it secure and, well, allows you to deploy it. But in fact, you would not need it. So maybe it would be good to somehow use some proper tooling or some services which could do at least some of these things for us. And, well, this is what this talk will mostly be about. So, one true story. About a year and a half ago, I was working for Revolgy, and we were managing infrastructure for a startup, nameless startup. The startup had quite interesting business case. They were in fashion business, and they were basically managing your style. So if you, I don't know, like how Kim Kardashian looks, you can just select her in their app, and the startup or the application would give you some tips what should you buy, and it will provide you with links where you can buy it on the internet. And well, that was the business model. The most cool feature, which I really liked, was that it was not just mentioned, it was just not meant to be linked with some famous persons, but you could take photo of somebody on the street, and there was some cool machine learning down there. And it would find the pieces of clothes that the person is wearing, and then it would try to find these pieces on the internet just to allow you to buy it. It worked somehow, and it was really cool. But why I'm talking about this? They had quite nice microservice architecture. There were several APIs calling each other. There were some problems that, well, the APIs were different because there were different vendors supplying them. But, well, we managed them just somehow to work. But there was some central point. There was an API, and the thing was called Woman Parser. When I first saw it, I thought it will solve all my problems. It hadn't, but it was processing the images. So if image comes, it will just parse it and say, okay, here is, I don't know, a purse, there are shoes are made of leather, and all this stuff. And the API was written by some Singaporean guys, and they were very good at writing the machine learning, and they understand how to do machine learning properly and all this stuff, but they were not so strict about writing usable and nice code. And it scaled somehow because we had some image that we could deploy to many machines. But we were not so brave just to install it from the scratch, because once I tried it, it just failed on the first installation of requirements and so on. But the funny moment started when owner of the startup came, and he said, hey, Karel, I have a customer who doesn't want to use our app, but he would like to use this particular API. And the API was hidden somewhere in a private network. There were no security whatsoever. It was just running over HTTP. And I was like, okay, what should I do? Well, we sit with colleagues, and he said, okay, well, after 2 weeks, we might, well, be able to solve it somehow. And yeah, but, well, they needed to have it in Monday, and it was already Thursday, so that was not acceptable for them. And I was just talking about this in the kitchen, and my colleague said, hey, and have you seen this API Gateway? They are running on AWS. API Gateway is on AWS, so it actually might help you. I said, oh, okay. And really, it actually helped us. And if you do not know what API Gateway is, what API Gateway is, it is a service which is offered by AWS, and it basically allows you to manage your API structure, so your whole API tree, and it does the routing for you, and you can integrate each endpoint with different technology. And it does all the boring stuff I talked about. So it assures you that you have some SSL there. It allows you to do some simple authentication. It allows you to do some rate limiting. And it's very nicely integrated with Swagger or OpenAPI, so you can export it to the Swagger hub and just show your documentation to users. And again, you can import Swagger as an API, so you can save your API just as a Swagger. You can deploy it in Terraform, and all this nice stuff. One disclaimer, I'm not an AWS employee, so I'm just user. So there's no connection between me and AWS. So that's it. Okay, and we are slowly getting to the second part of the presentation, where I would like to create an API in front of you. So I will end this show. Okay, do you see it? Yes, great. And I will enlarge the font a little bit. Cool. The thing you see is AWS console, which is the way how can we interact with AWS over web browser. Okay. And what do we have here? I have some sort of old API which is running there, and we will try to put this API behind API Gateway and make it secure and make somehow sure that our users cannot just break the API by overloading it and all this stuff. And somehow make sure that we can sell the API. No problem, okay. So here, just you to believe me that actually I have something. Here's an EC2 instance, which is a virtual machine, running some old API. It has some public IP, but this is just mostly for SSH access, and there's some security group which is saying that, okay, we can access it on port 22, but we can access it on, and the API is running on port 5000, but just in private network. And the most important part of this is there is a load balancer which sits in front of the API. Here it is, load balancer old API, and it listens on port 80, and it's forwarding everything to this target group which contains our instance here on port 5000. Okay, so we have old API running in private network, and now we'll go to the API Gateway, and we'll try to integrate the API Gateway with our API. I have created already an API. I called it landmarks, and the thing that our old API is doing is that if you put some name into the path, it will try to get the summary from Wikipedia and give it to you as a JSON. Very simple stuff. So, and I call it landmarks because I thought it would be just about landmarks, but it works technically for any Wikipedia page, but we'll pretend that it just works just for landmarks. I wasn't able to find any filter for landmarks. So, I will make it a little bit, yeah. So, here in the middle column, we can see that there are no resources in our API, so we will create the first one. We will follow some RESTful practices, so we will call the thing behind the root landmarks, and our API is able to get data about specific landmarks, so we will create landmark, and because this is a parameter, we need to put this into the curly braces. And we'll create resource. Cool. And we have resources, but we need the methods. So we will create a get method here. And now we just need to set it up and somehow connected it to the old API. Because I'm connecting to the EC2 instance, which is in VPC, I will use the VPC link. And I'm just, here you basically set the mapping between the request that came to the API Gateway, and you are creating a new request which will go to the thing you are integrating with. So we want to send a GET message to the VPC link, which is called old API, or to old API. I've created this before because it takes some time to set it up, and we need to fill in address of load balancer, which is here, once it reloads. So copy, // and we need to put the landmark placeholder there. And I can save it. And now it should be integrated. So wish me luck. And we can test it. So we can put some landmark there, for example, I don't know, Charles Bridge. Okay. And as you can see, I got something which could be the Wikipedia summary for Charles Bridge. It's quite long. So it works. It's good, yeah? If you want to, well, we just saw that it works in AWS. Maybe we would like to call it from some web browser or maybe from command line, some curl or something like that. Before we can do that, we need to deploy the API. API or API and API Gateway may have several stages. You can have a stage for your testing, for production, for I don't know, feature branches. So, and the stages somehow freeze. So if you are developing in this console, you will not break your production stage unless you deploy to it. I have already created some stages. I have stage presentation, which is just for this occasion. I will do deploy. And you see the stage info, and there is some URL which you can use to access the API. The URL is quite ugly, but well, for testing purposes, it's usually OK. You can, of course, set it up on your custom domain. I will not show it today because it takes some time to validate all this stuff regarding your domain and so on. And the domain I could use in Vistaprint is about the same length, so we will not help. And, OK. So we can try to call it. We will call it with the Big Ben. It's the same URL we saw in the stage. And if I press Enter, we get the info about Big Ben, which is, again, great. And as you can see, already we are calling the API over the HTTPS, and we did, well, not much. So out of the box, we have HTTPS. But that's not enough. Yeah? We need to be sure that we are talking just to the people that are our customers. And we should be somehow sure that they cannot break it. If I know their script got crazy, so it will not overload our API in the old virtual machine. What can we do? We can use API keys for authorization. It's the most simple authorization. It's usually OK for testing. In production, you probably would like to have some OAuth or something like that. It's possible to integrate it. But now we will create an API key. I will name it Karel, because it's my. And I have some API key, and API key is just some random string, arbitrary long. And to map API key with some stage of the API, we have to call some usage plan. I will name it for Karel, because it's for me. I will not enable throttling, not now. And no quota. And I will associate it with the presentation stage. And I will add an API key, which is the my key. OK. So now we are able, now we have a usage plan associated with some API stage. And we need to specify that for this specific method, we would like to secure it using API key. So we will switch this from false to true, so API key is required. And we need to deploy the API again. Cool. And now, if I try to access the API without the key, I should get something like, again, no, forbidden. So I'm getting the forbidden, which is okay. As you can see, the first request passed. The reason is that there is some sort of eventual consistency in API Gateway. So if it passed in the console, it doesn't mean that it's immediately applied. There can be few seconds or sometimes even minutes of delay between the action you've taken at the AWS console and, well, effect in the real world. So now API is secured, and okay, we want to access it, which means that we need to use our API key. And the most simple way how to use API key is to put it into the header. I will find it here. API key show. And now we are accessing the API with the API key, and if you do not have API key, it's your problem, you can't access it. Cool. So it is secured, but still, as I said, if some script get crazy, it still may overload our API. So maybe we would like to secure it from this point of view. And we have this usage plan, and you maybe saw that there are things like quota and throttling. So at first we can enable quotas, and I will allow 1 request per month, which is, well, usually would allow really more, but for testing purposes. So, and question for you, will the next request pass or not? Really? It's the first? No. It's actually not the first, because the first one was the previous one. So even if the quotas are not applied right now, the requests are being counted, and if you apply it later, it may happen that you already exceeded the quota. So I will then, okay, we will disable quotas, and we will try throttling. Yeah. And I'm not sure whether you can set any other, probably you cannot set any other date, just at the beginning of the month or end. And you see throttling. Throttling works on the bucket principle. You have some bucket with tokens that you can use for accessing the APIs. And once the bucket is empty, you cannot access the API. And the size of the bucket is the number in the burst. So we can have, I don't know, 10 tokens in the bucket. And the bucket is being refilled by the rate. So if I set 1 and 1, it means that I have 1 token in bucket, and each second I should get a new one. So I'll save it. And now we will see the full eventual consistency, because this usually takes some time. Okay, I'm already getting, cool. How to test it? I probably need some sort of loop. And done, like this. And I should be getting something like, yeah, too many requests, yeah. Some of them pass, some of them will just fail because rate limiting hits the limit. So this is a very simple way how to secure your old legacy API. Regardless what is it, how badly it is coded, how badly does it scale, you can put an API gateway in front of it and be somehow sure that, well, it should be alive at least till you can, I don't know, fix it or code it in some smarter way. The good thing is to notice is that in this moment, we can go and sell the APIs or sell the access, because if we give the API key to the customer, we can make sure that they will not exceed their quota that they could buy, and with very little automation, you can use it as your product. There is an application which is called API Portal. It's on AWS Marketplace, and it integrates with API Gateway, and it allows you to export documentation, which we do once we are finished. But more importantly, you can automate the provisioning of API keys to your customers using the API Portal. If you go to the AWS Marketplace, it is there. You can deploy it using CloudFormation. I will not do it here because it takes about 40 minutes. And we probably do not just sit for 40 minutes and look at deploying stuff. OK, so maybe I will disable throttling. Nice. As I was telling you previously about the API that we secured, we are processing images. And well, after maybe a week, we discovered that the synchronous processing of images is not the best idea, and some sort of queue would be nice. So, but if you are processing images, well, images are quite large, so the traditional message queues are probably not a good option. But AWS offers simple storage service, S3, which is somehow designed for this, and with some, again, very simple automation, you can make a queue from the S3. And so we did a pipeline that you can upload image to S3 using API Gateway. They do something, and okay, then of course retrieve it, or just, well, put it to trash bin or whatever. And I prepared a similar scenario here. We will do image upload using the API Gateway. But before that, I have a bucket. I will enlarge it, which is called API Gateway Upload Bucket. Not very original. And we will upload image there. Then we have a Lambda function, not this one. We have a Dynamo insert. And this Lambda function, which is, well, Lambda functions are in AWS, it's just a piece of code that you can run, and there are many triggers which can trigger your code. And this Lambda is triggered when there is a new object in the bucket. And yeah, it's written in a node, and it's very simple. It will just parse the name of the object that's coming to the bucket, and it will save it into DynamoDB. And DynamoDB is somehow serverless database in AWS. And we have a prepared table here, which is called API Gateway Images. Currently empty. So if we upload image to the bucket, the Lambda function will be triggered, and it should put an entry to this table. So very simple pipeline. Yeah, in the real world, you will probably do some more important job in the function. I don't know, like taking the image or, well, something. So back to the API Gateway. We would like to create a resource which is called, I don't know, images, not capitals, like this. And we would like to upload a specific image. If you would do it in your own API, you would probably just do post to images to follow some RESTful principles. I will do it not so nicely here. I will just do the put to specific image, because it's easier to parse the path than just searching for the name of the image somewhere in the request. And we will create a method, and it will be put, but it could be anything probably. And again, we are specifying the mapping between the request which came to our API and the request which will be sent to the service that we are integrating with. And we are integrating with, we are definitely integrating with something which is in EU Center 1, which is Frankfurt, and we are integrating with S3, which is somewhere down there. Yeah, you can see that there are many services you can integrate with. Usually, or everything that has some sort of API in AWS can be integrated with API Gateway. You just need to be able to create the API request for it. So, simple storage service. We will do put to simple storage service because put is to create a new object in S3. And we need to specify where, and I prepared this just to copy it and not to write it. So now we are saying, okay, put it to the API Gateway upload bucket, and the path should be the landmark and the name of the image. And the one last part, we need to say that this this method or integration has some rights. So we can put to S3. This is just a role I created, and it has rights to upload anything to the specific bucket. I will save it. Okay, so we can test it. We have placeholders for image and for landmark. The good question is, will it work now or not? Nobody knows? Who thinks it will work? Okay, nobody? So, test it. Landmark is Charles Bridge, image is, I don't know, front JPEG. We are not giving any real image here in body. If you try to put something without a body, it will just create a file, and the file will have 0 byte. So I will do a test. Oh, and we have internal server error. It's very bad. And that is because we need to do one thing, which and I spent like an hour and a half before I find this. And it's an integration request, and these landmark and image placeholders need to be mapped from the original request to the new request. So we need to add new landmark here, and we need to map it from the original method, request, pass, landmark. I didn't understand the question.
Just you spend 1 hour and a half before the talk or before the first time?
Before the first time. Image, so method, request, path, image. Okay, it is. And now, I hope it will work. So, okay, front JPEG, test it. And we have 200, which means that it probably passed. And how can we verify this? Okay, we can go to the S3, And if you do refresh here, oh, there is some folder, Charles Bridge, and there is some image called from JPEG, which is great. And if you go to DynamoDB, tables, items, we can see that it passed through the whole pipeline. The Lambda function was triggered. It's here. Thank you. Nice, but again, maybe we would like to try it with some real image and then download it, because this is just a empty file. Oh, sorry. So we would like to, or we need to, deploy the API, deploy to the presentation. As you can probably see, I have not put any authentication there, so we can call it without the API key. And what can we do? I have some images stored somewhere there. And it's a bridge 1 and bridge 2, and it should be, there are images of Charles Bridge. This one is small, this one is larger, so we can use this one. They are from Wikipedia. And if I search long enough, yeah, so just a call to our API, landmark, Charles Bridge, images bridge 2. We are saying that, okay, it's image JPEG, and we are uploading the file. So I can do this. In case the serial is not returning anything, it means that it passed, because it's designed to pass silently. So if we go to Dynamo, we should see that something is here. It's great. But we can download the file, download. We can try open it. And what happened? Bridge could not be opened. And I'm showing you this because I spent another 2 hours investigating this. So I'd like to save your time in the future if you're ever using this. If you want to upload any sort of binary data and use the API gateway as a, let's say, front end for this, you need to allow it. So you need to this, add that image JPEG. Image JPEG is the binary media type, and the API gateway should not touch it. Now, if I deploy it, is it set there? I have to save changes here. Okay, I probably have to make it smaller. Yeah. So now it should be saved. Cool. Deploy API again. I will delete the bad image from S3. Delete. And we can try another attempt. Okay. It's here. And now we have image. So it works. So yeah, if you want to use API gateway with binary content, it's possible. But you have to select it before, you have to specify this. Thanks. And you saw our pipeline. And we are importing data to DynamoDB, which is quite a good storage for in AWS. It's very versatile. You can use it for many things. But okay, we have data there, so maybe we would like to access it. And, well, we have API Gateway. So we probably should use it. And let's say we want to get all images for a specific landmark. So we will just create a new method there. It will be get. And we want to integrate it again with AWS service. And the service is now not S3, but of course DynamoDB. And now we have to somehow craft the proper request to DynamoDB. Usually you need some documentation for it just to read what you need to send. And I just know that you need to send a post, and it has to be a query. And again, we need some execution role, which will allow us to read from DynamoDB, which is this one. And yeah, probably without the leading dash. Okay, will it work now? Okay, we can test it. We get 200, but we have some strange exception. This is one thing about API gateways. If the response seems to be somehow reasonable for it, it will just return 200, and it will not propagate any sort of status code for you. So you just need to search through the logs and everything. And probably we didn't specify what table are we targeting and how we are constructing the query. So you can go back, if your integration request, and we need to create so-called mapping template, which is telling us, okay, if the origin request is of type application JSON, then you should do something with the request that we are sending to the DynamoDB. And I have this again here. So what is it? This is the request that we are sending to the DynamoDB. So we already said that it's query, but it's queried to some specific table name. I can enlarge it. No, what happened? This one. Okay, so we are, querying the specific table, and there is some condition expression. So the column landmark should be equal to some parameter v1, and v1 we define as a value which we take from the path, and it's hidden under the landmark parameter. So we can save this and give it a try. So we can do the same request again. And now we are getting data from the DynamoDB. So there were two items, which, we have two images there. And without any coding, we have query to the Dynamo. But as you see, this the return value is in the format which DynamoDB provides, and it's kind of strange because you have the landmark, and then have some S, and then just the Charles Bridge, and all this stuff. So maybe, well, it's definitely not the format of the response that your API is using. So maybe we would like to sanitize this a little bit, and you saw the mapping template I used for creating the request to DynamoDB, and I can use the very same principle for creating the request which I will receive as a response. So just convert the response from Dynamo to myself. And so if there's application JSON, I would like to do something with the request, and it's here. And again, what I'm doing, I would like to have some array images, and into images, I would like to put everything from the items, which was the top level object in the original response, and store it under landmark, and I will put the element, and I will just basically remove the S, and the same I will do for the image. So I can save it. Oh, I need to save this one. Okay. And then images. And I have more sane response, which I can use for my API. So this is great if you, because usually your API has some sort of standard response, so we can use it even if you are accessing other tools. And you don't have to depend on the format of the response they are providing. So that was integration with our small pipeline. I will show you two other things. The first one, which is the most simple one, but sometimes the most useful one, is that you can use API Gateway to mock things. And we will create a resource called version. Create resource. And okay, we want to just, not resource, method. We want to create a get method here. And we'll say it's just a mock. It's very useful if you are just creating a new application and you have divided your team into the front-end guys and back-end guys, and in the beginning, front-end guys have nothing to do because there is no API that they could integrate with. So you can just create some mocked resources and return some data. And it's very useful because you can use the same authentication for these resources, so they can at least test whether all these mechanisms work. And okay, we can save it. And if we want to return something, we need to create again some mapping template. And if there's application JSON, so we will return what? Version, and it's 1.00. And if I save it, I can test it. There are no parameters. And I got my response. But usually you mock more complex stuff than just a version resource. The good thing is that you can use it for things like version resources and all this static stuff that you just put it here, and if you need to update it, you can update it in, I don't know, Terraform script or somewhere else. And you do not need to create any code for just returning the version string or something like that. In our application I was talking before, we had used the mock to return some sort of elapsed image types. And the funny thing was that we used it really as a mock, and then it should be retrieved from some sort of database. And we just forgot it. And we were running the mock in production for 3 months. And it was totally okay, everybody was happy. And we realized that it's running the mock after somebody updated the database and it wasn't propagated. So really you can run mock version in production. And yeah, once we fixed that, we actually got an outage because the database was returning slightly different format. So yeah, the mock version worked even better. Cool. The last integration I would like to show you is the most useful one, and you can use it to build the whole API. Let's say that we do not like our old API at all, and we would like to replace it with something more scalable, maybe cheaper, and we would like to implement the logic in AWS Lambda. I have created another Lambda function. Lambda, and it's called wiki_get because it gets the information from Wikipedia. So it does basically the same thing as the old API, but it adds a word count of the whole page, just to see that well, it's returning something different. So to replace it, I will just go to this original get and to the integration request. And I no longer want to integrate it with VPC link, but I want to integrate it with Lambda function. I want to use the Lambda proxy integration, which means that the request is proxied to the Lambda function as it is. There is no conversion done on the API Gateway side. It's definitely in EU Central, and it's wiki_get. I will save it. Okay, I have to confirm that I would like to add permissions and so on. Traditional question, will it work? Okay, let's see. It's doing something. Yeah, and we have some result, and at the end of this we have word count. So 1,359 words in this page. I can deploy it to presentation. And I would like to use maybe this one, yeah. And I will save for big bang. You can use API Gateway Lambda to implement a complete API. You do not need to use any sort of Kubernetes or EC2 instance at all. It's great if you are starting with the API. It will not be maybe so great if you are in production and very large, because it may be quite expensive. I will get back to the presentation itself, which is here. And yeah, so you saw that I was able to implement some sort of API here in front of you in, let's say, half an hour. So it's really that simple. Of course, if you do it for the first time, there are usually some hiccups. It's, well, so easy, and I have prepared some code before. But it's doable. You can script it using Terraform or CloudFormation, but, well, if you ever use CloudFormation, you usually won't use Terraform. Last two things regarding pricing. Sometimes I get some requests, okay, how does it with pricing of this stuff? And in AWS or in any other cloud provider, you have some variety range of services. You can rent EC2 instances just as virtual machines, which is quite cheap, but you have to do a lot of things on your own. There's this shared responsibility model, so you are responsible, well, in this case, the AWS is responsible just for the hardware, and you have to provide your images and your applications, but you have really a lot of freedom. You can choose whatever libraries you want, whatever languages you want to use. It's just up to you. And if you go to the right, to the ECS and EBS and Lambda, with each step, AWS is managing some sort of some part of system for you. In case of Lambda, AWS is managing everything except the code for you, but you, of course, need to pay for this. And you are limited in the technologies you can use, so there is just limited number of languages you can use for the coding, and providing your own libraries is much harder. But if you do not mind the limit, it's a very easy and fast way how to do things and how to deploy your code. Yeah, I really like this chart because it just doesn't say anything. Its purpose is to showcase that for things like AWS Lambda, API Gateway, you usually pay for the usage. So if you have just deployed it and nobody is using it, you pay very little or almost nothing. If you are deploying your code to, I don't know, EC2 instances, you usually pay for the runtime of the stuff. And if you want to achieve some sort of high availability, you need to have several instances which are all running all the time. So you are paying something each month, even if nobody's actually using it. You have no users. So, and it means that, well, in the beginning, you are paying for the managed services like the Lambda, almost nothing, and for things that you deploy on your own, you are still paying much, much more. But of course, if you are using the managed service, you are paying. If you use it more and more, you are paying, well, for the convenience you have. So with the users, with the request and whatever is increasing, you are paying more and more. And in some point, from the infrastructure point of view, these two lines will just intersect, and well, you are paying more for the managed service than for the, well, self-managed one. You are usually able to calculate this, calculate it very precisely in terms of users or number of requests and so on. I always had the problems of figuring out when it happens. Is it in 1 week? Is it in 1 month, 1 year, or just ever? From my experience, some applications will never reach this point, which is for me the big pro for using the managed services, despite the fact that it may be expensive if I am successful and if I have many users. Because, well, if you have many users, then it means that you are probably earning some money, so you can pay it, you can pay for it, and if it's unbearable in some time, well, you can usually switch from the managed service to the self-managed, I don't know, in a week or two. If your application is coded in some reasonable way, rewriting Lambda functions to some usable framework and then run it, I don't know, on Kubernetes, it's not a big deal. So, yeah, it's nice. It can be quite cheap. Some summary, it is definitely not a silver bullet, but it may allow you to focus on your business logic and not on the boilerplate code. And we are currently using API Gateway with some other integrations in Vistaprint quite a lot, and we are very happy about it. So just try it. Okay, so do you have any questions? I could. Well, you can do it this in Terraform, and for this I have no Terraform scripts, so you can version this in the Git repo as. If I do it in the AWS console, there is let's say no versioning. You can just have it. Well, you there are some audit logs, so you can check what happened, but it would be quite hard to get back. If you really want to use it in production, I recommend using either CloudFormation or Terraform. Or you can, well, the Pullman versioning is that you will export it to the Swagger, and it will add some specific keys to the Swagger documentation, and you can import it back. And the Swagger can be stored, well, again, in Git repo or on Swagger Hub. So this is usually the way we are using it. In production, we are using Terraform, so this is probably the best way how to do this, or any other similar tool. Does it answer your question? Yeah.
What are the different kinds of authentication?
Yeah, well, you saw API keys. Yeah, so the question was, what are the authentication methods in an API gateway? There are API keys. You saw them. You can integrate it with Cognito, which is the AWS authentication service. And then you can put a custom authorizer there, which can be a Lambda function. And in this authorizer, we can call whatever you want. So we can integrate it with OAuth, or if you need, I don't know, Facebook login or something like that, you can use this. But you have to code it on your own. And you probably can find some references or some examples on, I don't know, Stack Overflow or somewhere else. And we are currently integrating this with Zero or something like that. There's a squad which is doing this. Yeah. Govin knows about this. Yes? Our CI/CD, well, we are currently in some phase that we are switching from Jenkins to GitLab. But the most simple CI/CD for this looks that we have Terraform scripts, which we push to the GitLab, and it's just running Terraform and applying the Terraform. We are currently not using Lambdas much because versioning of Lambdas is really bad. So we are currently integrating this sometimes with Kubernetes, or there are some old APIs that I showed it, well, which are versioned somewhat separately. Versioning of Lambdas is really, yeah, it's not nice. Yeah, we were using the on some old project. I was doing it in the way that, well, I had the code for Lambdas in the Git repo. When I was deploying it, you had to zip it and upload it to the AWS. So this was like my versioning, and I just switched to I just redeployed the API gateway. It worked as any other, versioning. It was not very nice, but it worked. Okay.
Any more questions? So thank you very much, Karel, for speaking. For those who are interested, next month we're going to run another architecture kata. You will find invitation pretty soon on our meetup page. In the autumn, we are planning about 3 speeches about functional programming and probably workshop. We will see how this goes. And for those who will show up, probably we will have most likely some tickets for Web Expo and DevOps 2020, as we are media sponsors for them. So you are welcome to come and win some tickets. Have fun.
Good.